The young and the restless spoilers in the heart of Genoa City's glittering skyline, and beneath its polished veneer of corporate prestige lies a web of secrets thick enough to ensnare even the most diligent of truth-seekers. At the center of one such tangled skein stands Aristotle Dumas, a man shrouded in mystery and whispered about in the halls of power as both benefactor and puppeteer. To the public eye, he is a distant patron, an enigmatic figure whose financial support has elevated promising talents and whose counsel has guided boardroom decisions that shape the city's economic future. To Billy Abbott, he has been nothing short of a lifeline. Since striking an arrangement with Damas, Billy has felt the tide of fortune at his back, project after project gaining traction under the watchful eye of his invisible mentor. Yet even as this alliance has promised to catapult his career to new heights, he has been warned repeatedly to temper his enthusiasm, to proceed with measured restraint, lest he awaken forces he cannot control. Behind the scenes, however, the dynamic between Aristotle Dumas and Sally Spectra is far more intricate than any facade can reveal. Billy has always been aware of Sally's voice in his ear, advising him when to strike deals and when to hold back, her suggestions carrying a persuasive weight that belies mere professional courtesy. Yet whenever he has sought to draw a line connecting Sally to the elusive Dumas, both parties have masterfully deflected his inquiries, maintaining an air of plausible deniability that only served to deepen his suspicions. With each passing day, as Dumas's patronage continued to bolster Billy's ventures, the notion that Sally and Dumas shared more than a casual acquaintance began to take root in his mind, sprouting tendrils of doubt and setting his pulse racing with uneasy anticipation. One restless evening, driven by an unshakable inkling that Sally was concealing more than just boardroom tactics, Billy resolved to uncover the truth. As the lights of Genoa City dimmed and the streets emptied of their daytime bustle, he watched from the shadowed confines of his car as Sally slipped into the driver's seat of her sleek sedan and disappeared into the night. Every instinct urged him to follow, to tail her even as she crept along deserted roads until she reached a remote forest enclave, an ancient stretch of fir and pine that loomed like a silent sentinel against the star-speckled sky. Sally parked beneath a thicket's edge, checked her reflection in the rearview mirror as if steeling herself for what lay ahead, and then slipped into the undergrowth. Billy's heart pounded as he killed his headlights and crept after her, boots crunching along the leaf-strewn path until he spotted a faint glow emanating from deep within the trees. A concealed hatch, partially buried under a bed of fallen needles and moss, opened onto a subterranean sanctuary. A bunker so unexpected in its sophistication that it might have been designed by Dumas himself. Metal walls hummed with quiet energy, and high-tech panels glowed with soft blue luminescence. Billy pressed himself against the cold surface of the outer wall and strained to hear the voices echoing from within. Through a narrow ventilation grate, he caught the tail end of Sally's whispered conversation with none other than Aristotle Dumas, her tone reverent, her words laced with filial deference. "Father," she breathed, "I did as you asked. Billy trusts me completely." The admission hit him like a thunderclap. Sally Spectra, the woman who had counseled and guided him, was in fact the daughter of the man pulling all the strings. Staggering back from the hatch, Billy grappled with his racing thoughts. Why had she hidden this truth? What did it mean for him to be both protégé and pawn? If Sally's loyalty lay not with him but with Dumas, then every word she'd uttered, every piece of advice, every strategic nudge had been calibrated to serve her father's agenda. The realization left him reeling, his confidence crumbling beneath the weight of betrayal. He knew that what happened next would define the course of his life. Would he confront Sally and demand answers? Would he approach Dumas directly and challenge the architect of his supposed success? Or would he retreat into the shadows, nursing his wounds and plotting the downfall of those who had manipulated him? As the forest settled into a deathly hush, punctuated only by the distant rustle of leaves and the low hum of life beyond the bunker walls, Billy made his choice. He slipped back into the darkness, every step resolute, mind sharpened by the truth he had unearthed. In the echo of his footsteps, the future loomed uncertain and fraught with peril. And yet, for the first time since Dumas had extended his hand in partnership, Billy felt the stirrings of genuine agency, a spark of defiance that could light the fuse of revolution against the very dynasty determined to control him. The night had revealed a secret that would shatter alliances and redraw the boundaries of power in Genoa City forever, and as Billy vanished into the inky blackness, one thought burned clear in his mind: now the real games begin. In the pre-dawn hush that cloaks Genoa City, Billy Abbott finds himself acutely aware of every breath he takes. The clammy chill of the night lingers in the air, seeping through the seams of his leather jacket and settling like an unwelcome guest in his chest. He can almost still feel the hum of that hidden bunker, the soft blue glow of technology that spoke of power beyond his comprehension. Each memory of the night's revelations presses against his skull. Sally Spector's whispered invocation of father, the weight of betrayal that fell between them, the realization that the woman who'd guided him was no confidant but an heir to a clandestine empire. Yet despite the gulf of deception that now stretches before him, he knows confrontation is not the answer, not yet. Aristotle Dumas is a man who does not reveal himself lightly, and Sally remains his carefully cultivated envoy. To charge in with accusations would be to hand them both the advantage. Instead, Billy clamps down on the tumult in his mind, reminds himself that knowledge is power, and that in the silent pursuit of truth lies his only hope of survival. He casts his thoughts back to the bunker's steel walls and the low, mechanical heartbeat that seemed to pulse through the floor. How unexpected to find, buried beneath the forest's undergrowth, a command center worthy of a shadow government. Dumas's fingerprints were everywhere. In the wiring that blinked like distant stars, in the layout of the room that spoke of military precision, in the sleek console where transactions could be orchestrated across continents. Yet it was the small details that cut deepest: the framed photograph of a young woman standing beside a stern-faced man, widely assumed to be Dumas himself, locked away behind tempered glass, and the archives of digital dossiers labeled with cryptic codenames. Those files, he suspects, contain the proof of their intentions, the real reasons Sally has steered him into Dumas's orbit, the hidden strings that have been tugged to propel his projects forward. And so, with the dawn's first light peeking over the horizon, Billy steels himself to begin. He will start with the rumors that swirl around Sally's past, fragments of gossip and shadowy anecdotes gleaned from late-night eavesdropping. They say she first appeared in Genoa City as a prodigy of the fashion world, her passion igniting boardrooms with the sparkle of new ideas, but whispers insist that her rise was no mere result of talent. Some claim she was an insider's child, quietly tutored in the art of persuasion. Others speak of a vanished youth spent in foreign enclaves, where money and influence taught her to read people like open books. No one seems to know the truth, and that is precisely what he must uncover. First, he will trace her earliest transactions, shell companies set up to finance her ventures, accounts opened under nondescript names. With the help of Jamal, his old friend in the Genoa City Police Department, he will request discreet checks into corporate filings. Next, he'll commission Elena, a private investigator renowned for turning over every stone, to map Sally's movements over the past year, tracking license plate records, hotel receipts, anonymous phone metadata. By the time Sally wakes each morning, sipping her coffee in some sunlit cafe as if unaware of his scrutiny, he wants to have enough verifiable data to sketch her true portrait, the daughter of Aristotle Dumas, yes, but also the architect of her own labyrinth of secrets. Yet for all the forensic precision of his plan, Billy knows that the human element cannot be reduced to ledgers and logs. Information without context is a half-truth, and so he prepares to engage with the people who orbit Sally and Dumas's sphere. There is Victor Newell, a Wall Street fixer rumored to have brokered Dumas's initial investments in Genoa City. If Billy can coax a confession from him, even quietly over dinner, he might learn Dumas's grand design. There is Simone, Sally's longtime assistant, whose loyalty has always seemed tinged with fear. If Simone can be persuaded that her own future is safer in Billy's hands than in Dumas's, she may become a critical ally. And there is Sally herself, whom Billy will approach not as adversary but as concerned partner, framing his questions in a guise of tentative trust. Sally, what are your hopes for us? What does your father truly want from me? He must bait her into revealing more, to stumble with an unguarded answer that cracks her carefully maintained mask. Each conversation will be a web of subtle prods and psychological maneuvers, designed to loosen her tongue without tipping her off to his deeper investigation. Still, beneath every tactical consideration, Billy carries the weight of dread. If his suspicions prove correct, if the documents and testimonies confirm that Sally and Aristotle Dumas have conspired to use him as a mere instrument, what then? His name could be sullied, his reputation fractured by association with their covert dealings. Worse, he might face financial ruin if the projects he launched under Dumas's patronage are revealed as fronts for darker schemes. The stakes extend beyond personal loss. His family's legacy, the standing of the Abbott name, could all be jeopardized. And yet, the alternative, to remain ignorant, to place blind faith in Sally's counsel, feels untenable. He recalls the confident assurance in her eyes as she first introduced him to Dumas's world, the genuine warmth that had drawn him in. Had that warmth been feigned, a calculated act designed to disarm him? The betrayal cuts deep, but in that wound lies his motivation, a drive to reclaim control, to turn the game back upon those who sought to manipulate him. As the sun finally climbs into the sky, casting a golden glow across the city's towers, Billy rises from his desk with resolve hardening in his spine. He pockets his phone, loaded with encrypted notes and the contact for Elena, and steps toward the door where a sleek black sedan waits, silent, expectant. Today, he will begin the first phase of his operation, a discreet meeting with Victor Newell at the Grand Peony restaurant, a neutral venue renowned for its discretion. Tonight, he will comb through the forensic report on Sally's digital footprint, delivered straight to his secure inbox. And tomorrow, he will shadow Sally to wherever she ventures, boardrooms, fashion previews, airport lounges, cataloging every move until the pattern emerges. Each step will be calculated, each interaction carefully orchestrated, until the murky depths of Dumas's designs come into clear focus. Yet even as he embarks on this mission, Billy cannot wholly silence the undercurrent of fear that tugs at his thoughts. Secrets have a way of fighting back. A single misstep could invite retaliation from powers that operate in the shadows, unbound by the rules of public scrutiny. He imagines Sally's reaction when confronted with irrefutable evidence, eyes blazing with anger, betrayal echoing in her voice. He imagines Dumas himself, rising like a leviathan from his hidden lair, to silence him with resources that dwarf anything the Abbott fortune can muster. And still, he presses on, driven by the conviction that only by illuminating the darkness can he hope to emerge unscathed. For in the world of Genoa City's elite, power is the ultimate currency, and it is time for Billy Abbott to reclaim his stake. The night's revelations were but the opening gambit. The game is far from over, and with every calculated move, he inches closer to the truth that will set him free, or damn him forever. In the waning light of society's crystal chandeliers, Phyllis found herself cornered in a plush velvet booth as Amanda leaned in, eyes narrowed with unspoken accusation. Phyllis had just claimed that she had no designs on contacting Aristotle Dumas, that the rumors swirling through Genoa City were nothing more than idle gossip. Yet Amanda's expression betrayed her incredulity. She had seen the furtive texts, the late-night phone calls, the way Phyllis always seemed to be just a step away from plugging into Dumas's orbit. As the low hum of conversation rolled around them, Amanda reminded Phyllis, firm but not unkind, that she was, in fact, Dumas's legal counsel, the voice he trusted to navigate complex agreements and shield his interests from prying eyes. It was a reminder cloaked in professional courtesy, but Phyllis felt it as a cold gust of reality. She could not hide her ambitions behind denials. Phyllis drew in a slow breath, steadying herself against the electric tension that crackled between them. She knew her future balanced on a razor's edge, held precariously by the chance of a single conversation with Aristotle Dumas himself. Over the past 12 months, her projects had fallen apart one after another, each failure echoing louder than the last and leaving her scrambling to salvage both reputation and livelihood. When her longtime friend had whispered of her disillusionment with Billy Abbott, of how a once promising partnership had devolved into half-hearted meetings and unsatisfying assurances, Phyllis had realized with sinking dread that she could no longer rely on her old allies. She and her son had pooled their remaining resources, determined to launch their own venture, but the seed money they needed threatened to wither on the vine without Dumas's intervention. Amanda listened, arms folded, as Phyllis described how her friend had confided in her the magnitude of her disappointment, Billy's inability to follow through on bold promises, his tendency to retreat when the stakes grew high, and the way he'd eventually compelled her to resign from society. Now, with a new enterprise emerging from the ashes of her past collaborations, she needed capital, and more importantly, she needed Dumas's imprimatur. It was not merely a matter of money. It was a matter of legitimacy. To be backed by the influential patriarch would signal to every financier in Genoa City that her plans deserved attention and respect. Against that backdrop, her persistence took on the character of survival rather than opportunism. Still, Amanda remained unmoved. She had already broached the subject with Dumas on Phyllis's behalf, casually, almost in passing at a reception, but his response had been a firm no. Not a polite deferral, not a maybe later, but a flat refusal. Even when Phyllis's solicitor had amplified the urgency, framing the request in terms of industry trends and potential mutual benefits, Dumas had made clear that he had other priorities. His vast portfolio stretched across pharmaceuticals, media, and nascent tech startups. The opportunity cost of diverting his focus to a fledgling enterprise was simply too great. Amanda's gentle insistence that Phyllis was overreacting collided against the steel truth in Phyllis's chest. Dumas's world did not revolve around her, and her sense of entitlement counted for little in his carefully calibrated hierarchy of investments. For a moment, Phyllis closed her eyes and let the weight of that realization settle over her like winter snow. She recalled the first time she'd crossed paths with Damas. A chance encounter at an art gala where he had paused to admire her speech on corporate responsibility. His attention had felt like a benediction, an acknowledgement of her worth in a world too quick to sideline women pursuing power. But that fleeting moment, as enchanting as it had been, had proven to be a double-edged sword. It had set her on a path that depended entirely on the caprices of a man whose true motivations remained obscured. And worse, it had sown the seeds of her own hubris, the belief that she deserved his patronage simply because she had once dazzled him with her rhetoric. When Phyllis opened her eyes once more, the glow of society's ambient light looked harsher somehow, etching each fold in Amanda's expression with stark clarity. She could see Amanda's concern, not just for her client's welfare, but for the reputational fallout that might ensue should Phyllis push too hard. A misstep in their dealings with Dumas could brand them both as overzealous, even reckless. It was Amanda's duty to counsel caution, and she did so with a mixture of professional duty and genuine empathy. "The last thing you want is to burn bridges you can't rebuild," Amanda had said, her voice a low murmur that cut through the din of the club. But Phyllis felt the roar of urgency in her veins, drowning out all but her singular objective. Securing that audience with Aristotle Dumas, no matter the cost. So she leaned forward, lowering her voice even as her pulse quickened. She would not be deterred by polite refusals or the labyrinthine priorities of a global investor. She would find a way, through charm, through persistence, even through subterfuge if necessary, to get what she needed. The future of her company, the dreams she had spun for herself and her son, depended upon it. In that charged silence between them, Phyllis made a silent vow: she would pierce the armor of Dumas's indifference, unravel the threads that bound him to his other ventures, and insert her own ambition at the center of his attention. It was a gamble that might cost her everything, but the alternative, watching her dreams wither for lack of backbone, was unthinkable. Amanda sighed, tapping a manicured nail against the polished wood of the table. She knew that once Phyllis set her mind to a course, few obstacles could dissuade her. "Just remember," Amanda offered softly, "I'm here to advise you, but I'm not in control of his decisions. If he's decided to focus elsewhere, he'll need a plan that doesn't hinge solely on his goodwill." Phyllis nodded curtly, letting the words serve as a salve to the swelling ache of her frustration. She stood, smoothing the lapels of her tailored jacket, and slipped a hand over Amanda's. "Thank you," she said, voice low with gratitude and resolve. "I'll handle the rest." As Phyllis departed into the night, the corridor's mirrored walls caught a glimpse of her determined reflection, eyes alight with purpose, jaw set against defeat. Behind her, Amanda watched, a flicker of concern crossing her features before it was replaced by professional composure. The die was cast. In the silent spaces beyond society's doors, the wheels of Phyllis's ambition began to turn. Gears forged from desperation and tempered by resolve. She would traverse every hidden passage of Artemis Dumas's empire, follow every whispered lead, and confront every barrier until she stood face to face with the man whose approval meant her world.